One of my favorite people from the Bible is Joseph in the Old Testament. In fact, we named our son after him. In the Old Testament, Joseph was the favorite son of his father Jacob, also known as Israel. His brothers were jealous of him and were going to kill him, but they decided to sell him as a slave instead and then tell their father that he was dead. After having been sold into slavery, Genesis 39, 2 through 4 says, "And the Lord was with Joseph, so he became a successful man, and he was in the house of his master the Egyptian. Now his master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord made all that he did prosper in his hand. So Joseph found favor in his sight and became his personal servant, and he made him overseer over his house and put him in charge of all that he owned." And then, if we read further in this chapter, we will see that the wife of his master falsely accuses Joseph of attempted rape, and Joseph ends up in prison. Then in the end of verse 20 through 23, it says, "And he was there in the prison, but the Lord was with Joseph and extended kindness to him and gave him favor in the sight of the warden of the prison. And the warden of the prison put Joseph in charge of all the prisoners who were in the prison, so that whatever was done there, he was responsible for it. The warden of the prison did not supervise anything under Joseph's authority, because the Lord was with him, and the Lord made whatever he did prosper." No matter the situation, the Lord was with Joseph, and he prospered in everything, as a slave, as a prisoner, in the midst of very difficult situations. During his time as a prisoner, Joseph interpreted a dream for the Pharaoh, warning him of a coming famine, and the Pharaoh put Joseph in charge of preparing the country. Joseph became the most powerful man in Egypt, second only to the Pharaoh. During the famine, many people came to Egypt to buy food, including Joseph's brothers, the same brothers that had sold him into slavery many years before. After about 13 years in slavery and then prison, Joseph was able to tell his brothers in Genesis 50:20, "As for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good in order to bring about this present result, to keep many people alive." God turned their evil into something good. This is what God does. He does exactly what it says in Romans 8:28. And we know that God causes all things to work together for good to those who love God, to those who are called according to his purpose. God causes all things to work together for good to those who love him. In this world, we will have pain. In fact, in John 16:33, it says that in the world you will have tribulation. He doesn't say maybe, or there's a chance it could happen. No, he says we will. We are going to have tribulation. There will be suffering. We will face pain. Sometimes we experience pain as a consequence of our sin. This pain doesn't seem good at the moment, but it is good for disciplining us, shaping us, teaching us to be more like Christ. But sometimes we experience pain that is not our fault. For example, many years ago, I felt the pain of losing my mom. My mom's death and the pain I experienced had nothing to do with my sin. They were not the result of my actions. This kind of pain, the pain that is not our fault, for me, is more difficult to comprehend. In my mind, everything has to make sense and needs to be fair. If I sin, I suffer. If I don't sin, I don't suffer. But that's not how it is. In fact, sometimes we need pain. Pain can be beneficial. For example, if I accidentally put my hand on a hot stove burner because I'm chit-chatting while cooking dinner and not paying attention, I need the pain to warn me to take my hand away from the heat before it causes permanent damage to my hand. This type of pain, a warning, an alert of danger, of course is beneficial. Sometimes pain can be a sign of growth. For example, after working out, we feel pain that tells us that our body, our muscles are getting stronger. We can see this type of pain in a spiritual way in James chapter 1, verses 2 through 4. It says, "Consider it all joy, my brothers and sisters, when you encounter various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance. And let endurance have its perfect result, so that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing." The Greek word translated perfect in this verse actually also means complete. The two Greek words that translate perfect and complete are very similar, both basically meaning complete, entire, whole, lacking nothing that is needed. Trials and the pain that comes with them complete us. They give us things that we lack, things we need to make us whole, like patience, perseverance, compassion, and so much more. The pain of trials is useful, but it can be very difficult to bear the weight of suffering. At those times, we need to do what it says in Romans 12:12, rejoicing in hope, persevering in tribulation, devoted to prayer. Even though it doesn't really make any sense, in the midst of trials, suffering, and pain, we can have peace. I mentioned earlier the verse in John 16:33 that says we are going to face trouble. But now I want to read the whole verse. In it, Jesus says, I have said these things to you, that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation, but take heart, I have overcome the world.